Welcome to the Women in Leadership Body, Mind, Soul, and Business podcast. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Heather. And together we are working to connect women in leadership and business, empowering each other, improving the health and wellness of our community, body, soul, and mind, connecting to the heart and soul of who we are and what we do.
Hey, it's Monday.
It's totally a Monday.
It's totally a Monday.
If Monday could Monday, today is a Monday.
Today is a Monday. So earlier this weekend, we had a big storm here in the Pacific Northwest. And that was what, Saturday?
I think it started Friday.
It started Friday.
And then Sunday morning, we had another bad storm come through, which was awesome because we got to sit on the porch
and watch the snow
and watch it snow and then stop. And then it was fine, but it wreaked a lot of havoc in our area.
So a lot of people are still without power. And as big storms do, we are still without internet. So we had to go find internet today. So we are actually sitting in the car in the parking lot of the local library.
So we are not the only ones.
We are not.
The library is pretty full of people that needed internet. Mm-hmm. Just like a whole bunch of people in there doing their own thing, got headphones in, just working away. And boy, does that mean you're not as quiet as you want to be because you're trying so hard to be quiet.
Oh my gosh.
Comedy of errors, that's when you drop everything gets in the way, makes bigger noise than you can imagine.
Everybody else is looking at you like, come on, really
are you done yet?
Right. So but it goes great with this week's topics. Oh my gosh, you guys.
So we've been talking about the 4 agreements, and I always love how it always lines up, because that's what we're talking about. That's what we noticed during the week. And so this week we're on to
always do your best.
So, and our leadership mindset topic is
flexibility,
which of course made us laugh profusely. So let's just start with flexibility. Like,
all right,
we obviously are embodying that. We are not in our studio space. We are not even on our normal internet, right?
Yeah. So this episode is actually going to be released a little later in the day because of internet, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can. So there we go. Right? We are always doing our best.
So flexibility as a leadership tool, like for your mindset, right? Best leaders get out of their comfort zones and quickly adapt to change in working conditions.
Look at this.
I can't even word like how much we embody that. Like, we are always adapting to whatever we need to get it done. We just keep going, and we're flexible. We're not stuck in one way of doing something.
No,
we are definitely not.
No,
because we would have never made it past like episode 3.
Right,
of our podcast, right?
And then as part of that, it's like being being flexible, because we have to wear so many hats,
right? Because as solopreneur, we all wear many hats, and that requires us to learn amazing problem solving skills. So
we have been on some really amazing calls lately with people, and they're talking about a problem, and the solution comes up during that conversation with just other women entrepreneurs and things like that we talk to, because us women entrepreneurs, especially, not to diss the guys, but we are problem solvers.
And we get in our own head about something. So if it's our problem, we can't solve it because we're inside the box.
Yeah.
So we can't see the solution that's written right on the outside of the box, right? So we can't see it. But when we talk about it and have community around it, it's just so clear.
Right.
And then there's these amazing aha moments where it's not so hard.
It's not. And it doesn't have to be hard. And, as part of that, ask for that constructive feedback from your community. Especially as a solopreneur. Hey, I'm thinking about doing blah, blah, XYZ. What do you think? And
that's engaging with your community, and it makes you part of your community, which makes life so much better, especially as women. We talk. That is like, it's been ingrained to us to have community. I mean, that's how we roll as women. We have community. We need each other. and we work together. And when we take the drama out of things, which is what the 4 agreements does, just takes the drama out, then we really get into what each of us is really good at.
Really good.
And along with that, when we're flexible, we can take feedback really well. And we went to a feedback class a few weeks ago, and that was, oh man, it's almost been a month. It was really good.
It was really good. And we have a book, Career Self-Care, by the author. I don't have it with me, and I can't remember her name right now, but I'm really looking forward to being able to read that book.
I've got through the first chapter, and the writing prompts to talk to yourself and how you're talking to yourself are fantastic.
Nice.
Like, it's deep. Like, how deep do you want to go? I suppose you could surface it if you want, but so I feel like it's one of those books that you read like a chapter a month almost, like, and digest it. Like, it's really good.
It's really, really good.
It's really good. All right, so on to the 4 agreements. Let's start with the review of the 4 agreements. All right, I'm going to start with: be impeccable with your word.
Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love.
Okay. Don't take anything personally.
Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering.
I love that so much. Number 3, which we talked about last week, was don't make assumptions.
Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and trauma. With just this 1 agreement, you can completely transform your life.
And number 4, which we're going to get into depth about today, is always do your best.
Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick under any circumstance. Simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret.
Boom.
So let's talk about that. Always doing your best.
I love that we get into that it's going to be different when you're healthy as opposed to when you're sick.
Yes.
No matter how you show up, if it's the best you can do, that's enough.
Right.
Stop being overachievers.
Well, so in this chapter, it talks about that overachieving piece as going too far. You're no longer honoring yourself.
Right.
When you are pushing too hard for
honoring yourself. And we've talked about that. It's not okay to dishonor yourself.
No.
So that's just equally as important. I think that's being impeccable to your word to yourself.
It is.
When you're honoring yourself and honoring your word to yourself, that you're going to show up and do something, but that doesn't mean you have to overdo something.
Right. Or run yourself into the ground trying to do something because that's your idea of what you said you were going to do. And that goes back to that piece of it's never okay to disappoint yourself, but it's okay to disappoint those others. So
if you're going to have to disappoint someone, it should not be yourself. Don't disappoint yourself.
Right.
And so if you're being impeccable with your word, you're setting yourself up to not disappoint yourself or someone else, right?
Correct.
Like, it's part of the process, and learning more and more what feels good when you say it, because we did that practice about saying our names a few episodes back, a few Mindset Mondays back, I guess, when we started.
When you're telling yourself the truth,
it feels different. So if you really notice that and you're practicing being impeccable with your word, it's actually really life-changing. It just really is. Because you don't, when you do push too far and you're like, okay, I actually can't do that, it's so much easier to admit. Because you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to make that deadline because, and I know exactly why. Like, okay, I did this, and this, and now that's not, and then
overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I put myself there
Right.
because of choices, which is right like what
Right
we're talking
here.
about.
So in the book it says, if you try too hard to do more than your best, you will spend more energy than is needed, and in the end, your best will not be enough. When you overdo, you deplete your body and go against yourself, and it will take you longer to accomplish your goal. But if you do less than your best, you subject yourself to frustrations, self-judgment, guilt, and regret. Right? Then we start blaming ourselves for
So you get
not
into
doing our
that
best.
negative
Mhm.
self-talk.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's like we've put these expectations on ourselves, like that we're going to do something
Mhm.
that's super unrealistic. So it's like it goes back to your goal setting. Like there's all these pieces that can
Mhm.
fall in.
Mhm.
So like as we're talking about it, that's why we keep talking about these things, because there's so many layers.
Well, and we keep talking about taking the next right step.
Right.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a deadline, and the outcome doesn't necessarily have to look exactly the way you wanted it to. Like, for instance, Heather and I have been talking about doing a retreat in the spring. We thought maybe that was about hosting one. Well, come to find out, we're just going to participate in one.
I was like floored. Right. Or
you know, these things come into your lives maybe in a different way than you imagined. So take a step back, take a deep breath, and pay attention, because if you always do your best, there's no way you can judge yourself. And if you don't judge yourself, there is no way you are going to suffer from guilt, blame, and self-punishment. Boom.
there's a chance that we can develop enough skills not to judge ourselves
There is
and
that.
not punish ourselves
Because we're doing
and
our
cause
best.
the
If we're doing our best, then we can't.
I
like,
want that for my kids
we can
so bad.
ask ourselves.
But for myself too. Like
Yeah.
we can see it in our kids, right?
Mhm.
But as we apply these principles to ourselves, we're giving ourselves the same gift we would give our kids.
Right.
I really like in the companion book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Of course, is like twice as big as the other book. Like, holy crud. But I really love this chapter. It really talks about going through the four agreements and using it almost like a checklist,
Which we've talked
and
about
we've
before.
talked about. I was like, holy girl, we do that. But I love this. Dream masters create a masterpiece of life. They control the dream by making choices.
Mhm.
Everything has a consequence, and a dream master is aware of the consequence. And I love that in respect to, like, when I go through things with my son, we
Mhm.
talk about like each little incident in things, and if they were a series of matches and one ignited the next one, ignited the next one,
Mhm.
what could you pull back and stop the chain reaction? And I feel that's exactly what this is talking about, like understanding the consequence of each thing that you're doing. Like,
Mhm.
oh, that caused this, which caused this, which caused that. And now I don't like who I am becoming because of that. But
Right.
if I just stopped it right here and said something, I would have been honored in the situation instead of dishonoring myself
Right.
and then causing needless suffering.
Exactly. Because we don't need to do that to ourselves.
And it comes with learning to trust ourselves and working on it every day.
Right. And if you are doing your best to practice the four agreements, it will come.
It will
come. You know, just trust us on this, because we have been working with the four agreements for
over a year now.
Over a year now. And it has completely transformed our lives.
This chapter goes more into like how to redirect your own drama, which is what we were talking about asking the questions. So
taking that step back.
Taking that step back and not being so emotionally wrapped up in the situation. So giving yourself the perspective, right? So sometimes when we are venting to someone, they can give us more perspective, but then it can lead to a negative, like almost like you're dumping on somebody. You're like, when you don't want to be emotionally crapping on somebody, right?
Right.
So that's
your trash. You don't want to dump it on
you don't want to dump it on someone else. So this gives you the opportunity to find that own awareness in yourself. So
take out
pulling
your own
that.
trash.
So yeah. So if it's really fresh, it's harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think back to something maybe a year ago that really upset you, and thinking about how much time it took for you to recover from that upsetness, you can learn to give yourself the grace period of how long you need, but you can also see your triggers and where you need to look at.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So should we share some of the questions from the book?
I think they're great.
So here's some additional questions to consider. So they talk about looking at it like it's a play. Like if you were to direct the play and you were the person saying, this is how you should respond in these situations. So who's holding the lead role? Are you the lead role? Is the person, were you supposed to be supporting that person? You know, what happened, right? So what was your role in the drama?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always taught this to my kids. Every situation, no matter how, personal it feels, there's two sides to every story. So your feelings may have been hurt, but so were theirs, possibly. Like, let's look at both sides. So what was our individual role? Because
are we taking it personally? Are they taking it personally?
Like how, yeah. And what actions did you take?
Right.
So when you took it, did you take it personally? And then what did you do?
And then react.
Yeah. So like, and how did you react? What are their actions to your reaction? And then that's that drama cycle, right? You can see it. You can, I mean, now definitely, but you can see it like when kids are like bantering at each other and they start picking at each other and they start that circle and nobody can get off and nobody knows why they started picking at each other.
It's like the
merry-go-round.
They get stuck on there and they just keep going.
And so is that the results? We're spun up in this merry-go-round and we can't get off.
Yeah. I mean, my son gets spun up in his own head sometimes and it starts doing that negative self-talk, and I have to get him off that cycle. And I do that by, okay, Gabriel, that's enough negative talk. Let's talk about things that we like, things that we're good at, skills that we have, start talking in a positive cycle about the same things that he was in a negative cycle about. And change the perspective, because if you change that perspective from positive to negative
to positive,
or negative to positive, right? Then it's flipping that switch.
It flips the switch, and then you start to develop a habit of seeing the positive instead of the negative. And the more what you see is the more what you get.
Yes.
So if you're focusing on the positive, you're gonna get more positive.
Right.
If you continue to focus on the negative, that's all you're going to see.
So think, okay, so imagine you're at ground level and you have all this negative stuff. You're digging a hole, right?
You can only look down and see your hole. You can only look down
and you can only see the hole you're digging. Well, think about let's say you're a couple feet down in that hole, right? And you look up and you see the light and you start climbing out, right? It takes some time to get back out of the hole that you dug, but oh my goodness, it's definitely worth it.
And sometimes you can be really deep underground.
Yeah, and it could take a lot.
And sometimes you might need someone to hold your hand to get out.
Right.
But there's hope. I promise. So basically, the next part is to start with the 4 agreements. Were you impeccable with your word?
Did you take it personally?
Did you make assumptions?
And did you do your best?
And you can do an instant replay. What might have happened if you had been impeccable with your word? What had happened if you had not taken things personally? What had happened if you did not make assumptions? And what would happen if you had done your best? And then you can ask that of the other person too in your mind. Are they showing up doing their best? Are they showing up being impeccable with their words? Because I know that that's something that really upsets me if I know someone's not being impeccable with their word. It, it it's a
really
real
grates
barrier. Really
your-
grinds my gears, right? What would happen if they had not taken things personally? Like if you could tell that they totally took it personally, they had something going on, something's happening in their world and they did not take it right, or that they had not made any assumptions about the situation, or had they done their best.
Right. Take a step back, look at it from your perspective and theirs. And I bet you there's a solution in there.
We find it all the time. And you can find that grace for yourself when you don't take it personally. You can find that grace for yourself that you did your best. And then all of a sudden your perspective changes on the situation, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing their best too, and this just sucks.
Right.
It can just be that. Like,
so we have these 4 agreements that we work with to work toward the positive. But what about those old agreements that we need to break? That's what we get to talk about next week, you guys.
ooh,
Breaking old agreements.
Yeah, so now we have plans to make the new agreements. Ooh, attach, detach. Ooh. Surrender to the angel of death.
Right, because
yes,
we create our own circumstance, right?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that next week on Mindset Monday, because we'd love to talk to you on Mondays. We love focusing on mindset. It helps us both immensely, and we're learning about some new things called positive intelligence. So there's some cool new things coming out, all based on things science, that people know in science. So we're just going to keep practicing these things and keep adding them in, and we
sharing them with you guys.
And we hope you will too, right?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for a message from Susan and Greta, who are doing amazing on their trip and journey.
I'm so excited.
We only have about a month left.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Until they get home. So they're due to be home by Christmas, but go ahead and support them on the Appalachian Trail for AT for PD. You'll find out more coming up next. We love you. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.
Namaste.
So we are Sue and Greta, or our trail names are Lilo and Stitch, and we are hiking the whole Appalachian Trail from Maine to Georgia, so 2,194.3 miles. And we're doing it to raise $50,000 or more.
Yes.
For Parkinson's disease research.
Yeah, through the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and we are doing it all in honor of my dad, her husband, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease back in 2010. So,
Right.
And we all know so many people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and we are trying to do our small part in the world of Parkinson's disease to find a cure.
Thank you for joining us today on the Women in Leadership Body, Soul, Mind, and Business podcast. Please download the podcast on your favorite podcast player. We love you, and we will see you next time. Namaste.